Okay, so the next topic that we're going to talk about is called The Brits Are Weird, meaning that that culture and that group of people, their ideas and their customs are a little strange to come up with these stories. Many of our popular scary stories are from the British culture. They created and wrote a ton of stories because that country is very old. And it happened a long time ago, and they controlled much of the world, so they could pull these different stories from the different countries that they overtook. For example, Dracula. That story was written in 1897 by Bram Stoker. But really, the concept of that story and that character was based on a real person called Vlad the Impaler in the 1400s. He was known for killing a lot of people. This story was set up in Victorian England. And remember that Victoria was a queen, so it was when she was in control. And Dracula was based on a vampire who lives in Transylvania, and every night he would go out and drink the blood of his human victims. And he would become a bat, and that concept of that man becoming a bat and being a vampire and drawing blood didn't start with Bram. Remember, this concept happened a long time before. Vampires didn't have a shadow. They couldn't see the reflection in the mirror. If you had a silver stake and you put it through their heart, it would kill them. And if you hung garlic around your neck, it would ward off the vampires. And also notice that the spelling of vampire changed throughout history. Because before, standardized spelling of English was not common. Later, they changed it so it would have a standardized spelling. Vampires are very popular and have impacted our culture today. We have True Blood, which is on HBO. Van Helsing is about a man who kills vampires. He's a vampire hunter. We have the serial of Count Chocula. The Count on Sesame Street, which is a kids' TV show. There's a lot of video games and board games. There's a movie Hotel Transylvania. Have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Vampire Diaries. And Twilight, which I have back here on my shelf. So, vampires are really popular. So one folk story that happened in the 1400s still impacts our culture today. Also, if you watch different TV shows, that people today actually believe that they are vampires. It's like their religion. They will drink blood, and they have blood donors who support them. It's odd, but that's what they believe. Another story that's related to this group of people is Frankenstein. So the author's name is Mary Shelley, and she wrote that story in one day. She wrote it in an overnight contest, and it only took her 24 hours. So most people think that Frankenstein is the name of the monster, but really, Frankenstein is the name of the scientist who made the monster. The monster's name is just Monster. It's a very interesting story. It's also very interesting because at that time, women could not be authors. It was not popular. And also the fact that it was a scary story that a woman wrote completely changed writing. So the story is really interesting because it's a typical thing for humans to want connection. They tried to make somebody that was perfect. It's impossible to make something that's perfect to connect with us. So with Frankenstein, that story is very popular. You know the movie Nightmare Before Christmas? The zombie, the woman who is sewn together, Sally, it's the same concept. That man was trying to make like the perfect wife or the perfect woman to match with him. And that's really based on Frankenstein, which was a British story from way back when. Another story that you might have heard about is Dr. Jekyll, and I always spell the name wrong, Jekyll, and Mr. Hyde. So that man, during the day, he's super nice, he's very formal, and he's a doctor. But at night, he changes and becomes a crazy person, almost like a monster, who is the complete opposite. He kills a bunch of people and steals things and destroys things, and then when he wakes up the next morning, he doesn't remember anything about it. So that man would actually be labeled with like a multiple personality disorder. So that story is also a British story and is very popular today. That character, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is used now to explain somebody who, like, 1 minute they're fine, and then in another moment they change and become very angry, or they're calm with their family and then go to school and are a complete disaster. Or the opposite. Maybe at school they're fine, but then at home they're so mean, almost like bipolar disorder. It's the same concept of this story. So those 3 stories that we talked about, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, are all from British culture that are very popular today and have impacted our current storytelling ways. And it's important to know these stories because you're going to see them over and over again in movies and books and television. And you get to pick which one of these you would like to start to read.